Alright, what's going on everyone? While Standard may have recently rotated with the release of Dominaria United, I am pleased to tell you that many of the Standard Challenger decks from last year are still quite playable in the new Standard, but not this one. This one is super dead, so here's the deck list for Mono White Aggro as you get in the box, and if we highlight in red the cards we lose, well, yep, that's a whole lot of them. That's a whole lot of red. In fact, let's make this more dramatic. Alright, so here's the deck list that you got out of the box, and if we remove the cards that rotated, where'd the deck go? It's gone. So it's pretty bad, but I do have some good news. While the Challenger deck might be dead, Mono White Aggro is not. You see, the reason this deck is dead, the reason this Challenger deck is basically useless, is because it was the 2 spells matters version. It played these cards, right? These things that required us to play 2 spells per turn. This was a version of Mono White Aggro at last rotation, but it sort of fell off, and this version of the deck wasn't really being played. Most decks had moved on to things like Hopeful Initiate, Adeline, Brutal Cathar, and all of these are still legal. So just as an example, here's a Mono White Aggro from before rotation, and if we highlight the cards that this deck lost, it's still bad, it still lost some stuff, but it's a lot less horrifying. We still lose some really good cards, namely Luminarch Aspirant and Elite Spellbinder, and these cards are very good, but we do have a pretty close replacement for Elite Spellbinder, and Luminarch Aspirant sucks, but it's only one card. It's a very, very good card, but the point is, Mono White Aggro is still playable, just not the Challenger deck version. So I don't think it's worth going card by card to show you how to update this deck, because we're literally building a new deck, right? There's literally 2 cards in the deck that are still legal. So if we're going to update the deck, we're basically building a new one from the ground up. So because of that, let me just show you what a budget Mono White Aggro deck can look like, and if you already upgraded your deck, like if you followed my upgrade guide when these were first released, or if you just upgraded it naturally, you might have a lot of these cards already, so it might not be as expensive for you if you've already been buying things like Intrepid Adversaries and Brutal Cathars and Adelines and stuff like that. So just to give you an idea, first off, we could play 4 each of Intrepid Adversary, Thalia, and Brutal Cathar. All of these are $2 to $3 each. But the good news is you already have 1 adversary from the Challenger deck and 2 Thalias, so that reduces the cost a bit, and I'm going to take that into consideration with my final price down here in the corner, so be aware of that. We can also play 4 copies of Anointed Peacekeeper, which is basically our replacement for Elite Spellbinder. If we compare them side by side here, as you can see, they have a very similar effect. I definitely think the Spellbinder is better because it has flying. The 3 power in the air would close out games, especially if you got like 2 of them. So it's a bit of a downgrade, but these are very affordable. We can pick up a playset of these pretty easily, and they slot in nicely. So not bad. It still does the same thing in that it can see board sweepers in the opponent's hand and make them more expensive, which can give us time to finish a game before those board wipes start hitting the battlefield. I also want to play 2 Adeline, and actually I want to play 4 Adeline, but these are like $5 to $6 each. So a playset is like 20 bucks. That's not the end of the world, but I am trying to build this on a budget. So for my build, we'll just play 2, but if you have any extra, Adeline is great. Probably one of the best white creatures in this deck right now. Playable in like Pioneer and stuff as well. So very good card. We'll play a couple of them. Not the end of the world to buy a couple more though. So before we move on though, I want to quickly mention some things that we can't play on a budget. We can't play Hopeful Initiate, Wandering Emperor, and Sarah Paragon. So first off, the Wandering Emperor it's kind of like so-so. It's played sometimes. It is kind of expensive for an aggro deck. But the first one, Hopeful Initiate, is like one of the best 1-drops for aggro. 1 mana 1/2 is great, and then it gets counters. Sometimes it can get like 2 or 3 counters in a game. It's amazing. And Sarah Paragon is like the best creature for this deck ever. It is so good. 4 mana flyer is fine, but what's so good about it is it lets us recast basically our entire deck from our graveyard. All of our creatures anyway. All of our creatures cost 3 or less besides Sarah Paragon. So a playset of Sarah Paragon just lets you recast stuff from your graveyard every turn. It's like Lurrus. It's like Lurrus in Standard again. Unfortunately, they're like $20 each right now. Really sucks. And Hopeful Initiate is also like $5 each, I think. So a playset of each, ignoring Wandering Emperor, would still be like $100 total. But man, if you open a Sarah Paragon in a pack or something, we get it in this deck. It's so good. So anyway, as such, since we can't afford some of these cards, we do need to make some concessions. So for us, I think we're going to be playing 4 Sun Gold Sentinels and 4 Guardian of New Benalia. The Sentinel used to be a main board staple for white aggro decks, but it hasn't seen that much play recently. But I still think it's good. And the Guardian, like it's kind of 50-50. Some people are playing it, some people aren't. The idea with it is you enlist your creatures, and then you can discard like excess lands to give it indestructible, to give you like an unstoppable threat, right? Because this deck doesn't need more than 4 lands, so if you draw 5, 6, 7, whatever, then they're basically like give Guardian indestructible every turn as you attack with it. And the best part is both of these are super cheap, so I think these are just good aggro threats to get in the deck on the cheap, since we can't get in Sarah Paragon and whatnot. I also want to play 3 Faithful Absence. While these are technically like $3 to $4 each, you had 2 of them in the original deck, so you only need to buy 1. So that helps bring the 2 in that you already have and get a 3rd one, and it's not bad. And then we need to address a big problem with this deck, because we're an aggro deck and we don't have a single 1-drop in the deck. We want a 1-drop. We want multiple 1-drops preferably. And the problem is, again, the best 1-drop in standard for mono white is probably Hopeful Initiate, and these are kind of expensive, obnoxiously expensive. So we can play 4 Hot Shot mechanics, and then in turn we can also play 1 Reckoner Bankbuster and 1 Imperial Recovery Unit. So basically, we want the mechanic because it's a 2 power creature for 1 mana. It's an aggro threat, but it's not a very good one. It has no relevant abilities unless we have vehicles, and we don't really want to fill our deck with vehicles. So we could play a couple of these. They can be relevant sometimes. The Bankbuster is great if we're flooded, helps us draw extra cards, makes a 1/1 eventually, cruise into a 4/4. And the recovery unit is like a really bad Sarah Paragon. Lets us get stuff back from the graveyard to give us extra gas in the late game. So I think both these vehicles are fine. The Hot Shot mechanic is okay. We can just play this package. It's very cheap as like budget filler. And going forward with this deck, if you're going to be playing this, I am definitely looking to replace these 6 cards going forward. We're going to be looking at previews of future sets, just looking for good white aggro creatures. We're looking for good 1-drops, looking for maybe a 2-drop or 2, or we're just replacing these with Hopeful Initiate. That's also an option, but these are very flexible. We're definitely looking to replace these as the format grows and as new cards are added to standard. But for now, it'll work. And finally, I think the last 2 slots can probably just go into Extraction Specialist. This is another card that helps keep us from gassing out, right? We don't want to run out of cards. So basically, it's a 3-mana 3/2, gets another creature back from the graveyard. Can't attack until the Specialist dies, but it's not bad. And also it has lifelink, which is relevant against opposing aggro decks. Being able to gain life and trade favorably by like trading 1 for 1 and then getting that extra card can really help when you're going toe-to-toe with like a red aggro deck or something. So it's not bad. Also helps against like Lilianas and stuff. So yeah, that's the deck. Of course, we have a sideboard too. I'll build a really quick one. Probably just fill it with a bunch of bulk situational stuff. And as always, I encourage you to adjust your sideboard to your local meta. Always build your sideboard to be good against stuff that you're losing to a lot. But regardless, I hope this is somewhat encouraging for mono white players. The Challenger deck is dead. Do not go out and buy this Challenger deck to get a deck for standard, because none of it is legal. I am strongly discouraging you from buying this deck unless you're playing it casually. For standard, it's dead. But if you bought this and if you've been upgrading it over the past 6 months or whatever, it's definitely very possible to update this for the new standard. And honestly, it really only feels like maybe 4 or 5 cards away from being like really, really good. We definitely have some weaker cards, again, that Hot Shot mechanic and that vehicle package, but I think the deck is very playable, and it might not cost that much if you've already been upgrading your deck. So yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful. Hope it was somewhat encouraging if you were lamenting the death of your deck. It is possible to still play mono white with a bit of work. So hopefully that's useful, and I will see you in the next one.